To test whether his girlfriend truly loved him, the CEO deliberately pretended to be poor for a full 3 years. Not only did he live with her every day in a cramped 50-square-meter shared apartment, but even when they went on dates and stayed at hotels, he insisted on splitting the bills with her. Yet despite all this, the girl never once complained. Until one day, while working her part-time job, she accidentally overheard a conversation between the CEO and her so-called best friend. Only then did she realize that everything over the past 3 years had been an elaborate act, a poor man's charade carefully orchestrated by her boyfriend. She made up her mind right then to leave this man who had deceived her, but fate had other plans. Her mother suddenly fell critically ill and was bedridden, in desperate need of expensive surgery. However, most of the money the girl had earned over the years had gone to supporting her supposedly poor boyfriend. With nowhere else to turn, she swallowed her pride and went to borrow money from him. The white moonlight, the CEO's ideal woman, standing beside him stirred the pot, accusing the girl of being nothing but a gold digger. Not only did he refuse to lend her the money for the surgery, but he wouldn't even give back the 2,500 yuan she had previously lent him. Yet in the next breath, he took out a necklace worth 30 million yuan and personally placed it around the white moonlight's neck. Watching this scene, the girl's heart turned to ashes. Helpless, she called every relative she had, begging for help. But as the saying goes, in the bustling city, no one asks after the poor. When it truly came down to money, not a single relative was willing to lend a hand. Dejected and distraught, she was accidentally knocked down by a luxury car. The driver quickly took her to the hospital for a checkup, but the girl said she wouldn't hold anyone responsible. She only asked for 2,500 yuan in compensation. And just like that, she scraped together every last penny and finally managed to cover her mother's surgery fee. But when she arrived at the hospital, the doctor told her the devastating news. Her mother had missed the critical window for treatment and had already passed away. If she had come just a little earlier, there might have been a chance. Staring at her mother's pale, cold face, the girl completely broke down. She held her mother's hand tightly, fantasizing that she might wake up again. At that moment, she noticed a note clutched in her mother's hand, a final message filled with worry and advice, urging her to take care of herself. Overwhelmed with regret and self-reproach, the girl hated herself for being so foolish all these years, for being a lovesick fool who had poured all her savings into a man who only deceived her, to the point where she couldn't even save her own mother in time. Snapping back to reality, the girl held her mother's portrait and decided to leave this heartbreak city for good. But just then, she ran into the CEO, who was stumbling back drunk after a night of debauchery. Without a second thought, he ordered her to go make him a hangover soup. The girl couldn't be bothered and just wanted to leave, but the CEO thought she was still sulking over the 2,500 yuan. He pulled out a wad of cash and threw it at her feet, commanding her to go cook. At that moment, the girl felt utterly ridiculous. In his eyes, she was nothing more than a puppet. She was about to tell him that her mother had died, but before she could, the CEO brought the scheming woman back home with him. The scheming woman immediately started hurling insults at the girl, accusing her of shamelessly living in the CEO's house while daring to throw tantrums at him. Little did she know, the girl had been splitting the rent with the CEO all these years. But the scheming woman sneered, saying that without the CEO, the girl could never have afforded to rent such a luxurious villa. The CEO stood by, putting on an indifferent air, and even offered to refund all the rent the girl had paid over the years, saying she could name any amount. He'd transfer it right away. He added that he'd just consider it money spent on having someone keep him company all these years. The girl never expected that 3 years of genuine devotion would end in such humiliation. Heartbroken to the core, she finally couldn't hold back any longer and decisively broke up with him, telling him she would leave the city the very next day. Early the next morning, the girl packed her belongings and went to the HR department to submit her resignation. To her shock, she learned that the company she worked for was also owned by her boyfriend, the CEO. The accountant was stunned, asking if the CEO had approved her resignation. The girl then discovered that her boss was none other than her scumbag boyfriend. The accountant said, "You're the CEO's girlfriend, did he never tell you?" and added that since she was resigning now, her salary for this month wouldn't amount to much, but the remainder would be deposited into her other bank account. She had no idea she even had another account. All these years, she'd only ever received her base salary, and it was always paid into the same card. Only now did she fully understand. The CEO, claiming to prevent her from spending recklessly, had all along instructed HR to split her salary and bonuses into 2 separate accounts. Over the years, her accumulated bonuses had actually reached several 100,000 yuan. The girl finally understood why. No matter how hard she worked, her pay never matched her colleagues. Yet another scheme in the CEO's elaborate poor man's game. Furious, she stormed into the CEO's office with her resignation letter to confront him. But the CEO acted dismissive, insisting he'd been doing her a favor all along by supporting her. He said that if it weren't for him, she and her mother in the countryside would have starved to death on the streets. Colleagues nearby started whispering. Some thought the girl was ungrateful, but she shot back that the CEO was the kind of man who split the bill on even a cheap umbrella. Everyone was shocked, a scion of a wealthy family, yet he'd even split hotel bills with his girlfriend. They all thought he was incredibly stingy. Even so, the CEO remained arrogant and self-righteous. Completely done with him, the girl grabbed her luggage and turned to leave. But the CEO suddenly reached out to stop her and accidentally knocked her mother's portrait out of her arms. To make matters worse, this blind and heartless man accused her of faking her mother's death just to extort sympathy and money from him. Just then, the company's accountant rushed over, and the CEO finally realized just how terribly wrong he had been for the past 3 years.